automatically it'll say 410 million years old. That's what's been done for the last 150 years. Graptolites are one of the index fossils. But in 1993, they discovered graptolites are still alive in the South Pacific. Earth Magazine, September 93. Well, if they're still alive, maybe they could be found in any rock layer. There's indication there are some trilobites still alive in the deep Peruvian trench. Some of the deep research vessels have said it looks like there might be trilobites down there. I don't know, it doesn't matter. The fact is, there's no such thing as an index fossil. But all of geology is built around these index fossils being in a particular order. So if you find a rock containing a trilobite on top of a mountain, it got there by an overthrust or something. They will figure out some way to explain how this 500 million year old rock is on top. Anything except the obvious, that maybe the fossils don't mean anything. But all of the geologic column is based on index fossils. Dinosaur blood found in bone. Medical pathologists examined dinosaur bone under a microscope and found dinosaur blood inside the bone. Earth Magazine, June 97. Now, how can blood survive for 70 million years? 18 million year old magnolia leaves from Idaho shale were still green when the rock was cracked open. Campbell is a far cry from a creationist. Fossil bees, 25 million years old, contain ancient germinating bacteria in their abdomens. I don't think so, folks. Those are not millions of years old. These petrified trees that are found standing straight up all over the world, they're called polystrata fossils, indicate the layers did not form slowly over millions of years. The layers formed rapidly before the trees could rot. I have seen scores of these things. Petrified trees running through multiple rock layers. Those rock layers are not different ages. Sometimes the petrified trees are upside down, running through rock layers. I think the best explanation of this type of thing is a worldwide flood in the days of Noah, just like the Bible says, where you would get the earth covered with water. The earth is still spinning under the moon. The moon doesn't know there's a flood going on. So the moon is still pulling up on the water, causing the tides. But now you have a unique problem in a worldwide flood, because if the earth was totally covered by water, there would be no continents to stop the tides. I live in Florida. The tides wash up on the beach and they wash back down. But if there were no continents to stop them, the tides would become harmonic. They reinforce each other after a while. And laboratory tests have indicated if the earth were covered by water, the tides would be 200-foot tidal change every 6 hours and 25 minutes. Well, I was up at the Bay of Fundy a few months ago and watched the tide come in 100 feet. And the erosion is incredible along the edge of that place. Go to the Bay of Fundy in Canada and you'll see what I mean. I mean, that tide comes roaring in there. They put rubber rafts out there and you pay $10 to get in the raft and you go surfing in front of the tide. You surf upriver about 30 miles. Well, time, okay. The erosion from the moon, from the tides during the worldwide flood, would cause thousands and thousands of feet of sedimentation. That's why we have fossil layers. That's why we have layers containing zillions of dead things. It formed in a flood. The earth is speaking to us as loud as it can. There was a flood, the judgment of God, not millions of years of evolution. Thank you.
My first question for Kent Hovind is, you describe a flood 4,400 years ago, an evolution of varieties from a single kind. With the degree of change that you imply in less than 1,000 years or so, why do you not consider yourself to be an evolutionist? Because whether you realize this or not, you're accepting a rate of change since the alleged flood that any real evolutionary biologist would find absurd.
The rate of change that Christians, that creationists say happens is within the limits of the biblical kind. Charles Darwin, in 1859, sailed around the world and ended up, one of the places he stopped was the Galapagos Islands. Here on those islands, he saw 14 varieties of finches. He decided, after studying them carefully, by the way, he hated birds because he liked worms, and he thought it was kind of cruel for birds to eat worms, so he shot every bird he could find. And he collected all sorts of these birds, and Charles Darwin said, I think all these birds had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. It was a bird. And then Charlie said later in his book, on page 170, in his book, Origin of Species, Charlie said, "It is a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants, throughout all time and space, should be related to each other." So the birds and the bananas are related, according to Darwin. And I'm sure Dr. Bartell feels the same way, if you go back far enough in time. Now here's the problem. What Charlie observed is what we sometimes call microevolution. Now I object to that term. We should call it variation, because it's not evolution at all. I wouldn't include that word evolution with it. It's a variety. Dogs produce a variety of dogs. No argument. Everybody agrees with that. Maybe even the wolf, the coyote, and the dog had a common ancestor. No argument. That's a variation. It's a variety. Roses produce a variety of roses. See, this is what we call a fact. This is observable science. But what happens is, you get dogs, big dogs, and little dogs, but they're still a dog. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Nobody's ever seen a dog come from a non-dog. And a 3-year-old can tell the difference between a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others, boys and girls? Well, duh. It's still the same kind of animal, okay? So the problem is, the Bible says they bring forth after their kind, not after their species. And Darwin got all bent out of shape about species, origin of species. See, what the evolutionist wants you kids to do, they want to show you thousands of examples of microevolution, which is a fact, and then try to make you take a giant leap of faith and logic into believing that somehow that proves the dog and the wolf came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. Well, look, macroevolution is religious. And when I say evolution is a religion, I'm referring to macroevolution. Now here's the problem. When you say the word evolution, Dr. Bartell is thinking of thousands of examples of microevolution, and she doesn't understand how I can't see it. But I am thinking of macroevolution, and I don't understand how she can see it. So we're really speaking different languages here. It's because of the definition of the word evolution. It has two unrelated meanings. So when I say the word evolution, I am not referring to microevolution. That is just a variation. It's still the same kind. And the varieties have limits. Farmers have been trying for years to get bigger and bigger pigs, but they'll never get a pig as big as Texas. There are limits to these variations. That's a fantasy.
Okay. In one of Hovind's website areas, he says that creationists say that variations have taken place since the flood, and he says the Eohippus is nothing more than the hyrax running around South America today. So Hovind is apparently saying that this type of change is consistent with microevolution, and that it took place in the last 1,000 or so years. Next slide, please. However, the fossil record shows evidence of this much change in about 4 million years, and this is supposedly macroevolution, because creationists call apes and human beings different kinds. I wonder who is really the evolutionist here. I don't see a lot of difference.
I didn't get time to get my slides up. I'll get it for next time. On the horse evolution, which has been discredited many years ago by many experts in this field of horse evolution.
You're supposed to ask me a question.
A question now.
I'm supposed to ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. We'll start at the beginning of my list. Where did time, space, matter, and energy come from?
29 black, please, first. First of all, looking at his questions, most of these have very little to do with the theory of evolution. And this is another case of Hovind redefining things and setting up strong men. I don't believe in the theory of evolution. I provisionally accept the overwhelming evidence from anatomy, molecular biology, paleontology, and geography. Anyway, I'll give you a threefer. Where did space for the universe come from? Matter and the laws. Well, what are laws? They're just descriptive generalizations. They don't have to come from anywhere. They work down to the earliest 10 to the minus 43 second of time, and that's good enough for me because science does not deal with ultimate causes. Space and time are created as the universe expands, and some physicists propose some sort of huge virtual particle which is a little out of my realm of expertise. However, a great discussion of this is by an evangelical Christian named Dr. Hugh Ross, and I would encourage you to pick up his book at the Berean bookstore. It's a pretty neat example of creation ex nihilo, which Hovind supposedly espouses, and except for the time frame, it's consistent with Hovind's creation account. It's very improbable, but it only had to happen once, and we live in a world of improbable events. All of you are improbable events when you consider the number of sperm, 50 million per cubic centimeter, that can fertilize an egg, and yet here you are.
I ask a question?
1 minute to respond.
1 minute to respond. Oh, okay. To follow the sequence here. I don't think you answered the question. Where did time, space, matter come from, except you beg the question and say, we're here. If I understood what you said. Let me show you what the argument is. The word evolution not only has two different meanings when it comes to biological evolution. There are several other types of evolution. The evolutionist believes, and I can show you from hundreds of textbooks if you'd like, we can show you all this, and I've got them with me in the computer, take me a minute to find it. The evolutionist believes 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang. Or some say 16, some say 18. Okay, the point is, a long time ago there was a Big Bang. They do not tell us where the time, where the space, where the matter came from. They also don't tell us where the energy came from. The whole idea behind a black hole is that you can get so much mass in one place that even light cannot escape. But if you had all the mass in the universe in one place, how could it explode? How could anything escape? Where did this mass come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the laws come from? Then, they say 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled down and developed a hard rocky crust. And it rained on these rocks for millions of years, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive 3 billion years ago.
Time.
That's religion. That's a fairy tale. Thank you.
You say that the Earth's magnetic field is getting weaker with time, and that it was 20 times as strong in Adam and Eve's time. What is your evidence for this?
Ever since Gauss first measured the Earth's magnetic strength, it has been observed that the magnetic field is getting weaker. I don't know the numbers. I have them in a book. I can look them up for you if you want the precise numbers. But it's been observed the magnetic field is getting weaker. This was a problem. So one of the things that was done was the mid-Atlantic ridge magnometer was dragged across the ridge, and they noticed there were magnetic anomalies. Now, when it shows up in the textbook, it says there are magnetic reversals at the bottom of the ridge. This is absolutely a lie. There are no magnetic reversals at the bottom of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge or any place in the world. There is no place on the bottom of the ocean where a north-seeking compass will point south. There are places of stronger and weaker magnetism. So what happened was they noticed strong magnetism, weak magnetism, strong magnetism, weak magnetism, all pointed north. But they drew a line through the middle of this S-curve and said the ones below the line are south-seeking. Absolutely not true. There is no place on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge where a north-seeking compass will point south. I think there's a better explanation for why we have the weaker areas of magnetism at the bottom of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. I think that's one of the places where the fountains of the deep broke open during the flood, and the basalt bulged up and cracked. And hot basalt loses its magnetism. Cold basalt stores its magnetism. And so the water rushing into these cracks cooled off the basalt, and you have areas of strong magnetism, weak magnetism, strong magnetism, weak magnetism, indicating the cracks in the Earth, but none of them are reversals. I defy anybody to show me one of those. So the magnetic field is declining. That's all we've observed. If the evolutionist wants to believe, and I'll give that a capital B because that's part of a religion, if they want to believe that this indicates the Earth is billions of years old because they've reversed over time, I would challenge them to show me a place where they're reversed and show me a mechanism that could possibly reverse the magnetic field of the Earth. What on earth could do that? It's never been observed. All we've seen is it's declining. I stand by the scientific evidence that indicates it's declining. It's probably not billions of years old.
You can go on to the next one. I think you pretty much summarized that one up.